James Gunn's rebooted Superman film has led to a lot of discussion online, with some people loving it, some people kind of thinking it was meh, but also some people hating it. Today, I'll be talking with Chris, who is the host of the Morning Mayhem on YouTube and on Rumble. He is going to break down and share his side of the story. See, I kind of liked Superman. I thought it was fun, entertaining film. He did not. So we're going to have a discussion about it, share our thoughts on the film, and expand on what we think is good and bad in the film. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute, going for a ride down the side. Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Berry. Welcome to the StudioJake vidcast, where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell so you get notifications when I post a new vidcast, and consider becoming a channel member. If you want to support me in the work that I do, head on over to my new website, studiojakemedia.substack.com. Thank you in advance. And without further delay, let's bring in Chris, and we will be discussing James Gunn's 2025 film, Superman. And yes, there will be spoilers. This is your spoiler warning. All right, so Chris, you and I had very different uh, thoughts about the movie when it came out. So I enjoyed it a great deal. I talked about how fun it was, how I enjoyed seeing Superman back to sort of a more of an inspirational role. But you didn't agree with that. So tell everyone over at StudioJake and everyone watching what why you didn't care for it that much, shall we say?
Well, I always enjoy talking with you about this kind of stuff. We have great conversations. So thank you for having me on, first of all.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think we can both agree there were things in the movie that we really liked, and there were probably things in the movie that we probably didn't like. And I think we could come in common ground that it wasn't a perfect film by any
Oh, for
means.
sure. Right.
Um, I feel like it was definitely a film for the modern audience, for the TikTok audience. In fact, that just recently was a revelation that I've had. Um, some of my biggest beefs, and it'll be, I may hit spoilers here, but I won't go too in depth because then I'll start going down rabbit holes. But the biggest problems I had is everything felt very thin. The character developments weren't there. The relationship developments weren't there. Too many characters, too much going on. I saw a great clip that was an old clip. It was Nerdrotic was sharing an old clip of Matt Parker or Matt Stone Trey Parker talking about how you shouldn't be writing your scenes and then it shouldn't follow that flow. It should be because or therefore this happened. And this felt like a lot of and then. We moved from one thing to the next to the next. Now, I loved, I think, I think Corn Sweat was a great Superman. I think this was a great casting. In fact, most of the cast I think was phenomenal. I didn't love the script. I didn't, again, think that there was enough time to really fall in love with these people. And I wanted to. I genuinely wanted to because I like getting back to this kind of Superman that is more of a, I mean, I'm going to run out there and rescue a squirrel kind of thing, or I'm going to make sure this dog doesn't get hurt. Genuinely getting emotional and upset about human life being lost, or even this one monster that they were fighting. He didn't want to kill the monster. He wanted to send it off to the zoo, or something like that, an intergalactic zoo or something else. But he valued life, and I thought that was so back to the origins of Superman. And he didn't cuss. He was very pure in his sense, and I loved all that about it. But then that ended up being a lot of his weaknesses in the film that the other people in the film, I feel like, bullied him on. I feel like the Justice Gang didn't hear him out on that stuff because with that monster, Mr. Terrific, who had probably the best character development in the movie, Mr. Terrific comes along and just kills the monster. And Superman's like, oh man, I didn't want to do that, and he's a running gag and a joke for Green Lantern, what's his name? Not Hal.
Guy Gardner.
Guy Gardner. There we go. Uh, I just felt like he was kind of a punching bag for some folks, and he's been around for a few years. We saw at the beginning. For those who have seen it, there's almost this half the story at the beginning. 3 decades ago or whatever this happened, and this and this and this. So we know where we're at. So this isn't Superman day one. dude's been around for a few years being Superman, and he has everybody loving him, but he still kind of felt like a punching bag. Now, before I start diving into more and more of that kind of stuff, and where I feel like the script kind of things happen too easily so that the story could continue on the way they want it to. I'll pause if you want to interject anything there,
Well,
or
I do agree with you that the plot was paper thin, and I even said that when I released my review. I said the
Mhm.
plot is incredibly thin, but I guess maybe it's a millennial thing. The fast pace didn't really bother me. I do agree with you. It was very and then and then and then, and normally that doesn't work for me. But I felt like James Gunn, that's kind of his style, especially if you watch the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now, Suicide Squad was not like that. Suicide Squad had a very good Act One, Act Two, Act Three format, in my opinion. But that's kind of his style. I will say though that if you're unfamiliar with Guy Gardner, I can see why he was very off-putting because he's kind of like that in the comics. In fact, I think at some point he actually gets kicked out of the Green Lantern Corps because he's so cocky. The other Green Lanterns kick him out, and he actually ends up stealing Sinestro's ring. So he becomes a heroic Yellow Lantern for a little while in the comics. I don't know if they're going to do that here,
Mhm.
but it's certainly possible. I guess nothing's off the table, but I guess I've been beaten down so much in the films because you had Superman Returns, where as much as I like Brandon Roth, I think Brandon Roth, it's one of those things where he was the right cast in the wrong movie. I feel like Superman came off as very creepy. He's using his X-ray vision and super hearing to spy on Lois and her family and everything. And then you had Henry Cavill, and again, I like Henry Cavill. Again, right cast, wrong film. But I felt like he was just so dark and so nihilistic, and I don't feel like he grew from Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with Gunn, he was assuming that you knew about Superman,
Mhm.
but you and about Green Lantern, which a lot of people don't know Guy Gardner. He's very, very niche. He was, I think his most prominent role was in Justice League International. So it's very, and that wasn't a big seller. Even back when Justice League was selling,
Mhm.
JLI was not a big seller. But I think that James Gunn was going with the assumption that you knew who Hot Girl was, you knew who Green Lantern was because of the animated shows, but not Mr. Terrific, which is why I think he's in 2 episodes of Justice League Unlimited, which is the animated show. So I think that's why he was going with people don't know who he is. But I guess that didn't really bother me. Now I will say I think that the stuff with Jarrell is going to get answered. I think that Lex Luthor was lying. I think they're going to retcon that in Supergirl. If I was a betting man, I would say that they're going to do that, and it's going to be this big reveal that Luthor was lying about that, and so that's going to clear Superman's name, so to speak. I thought that was a huge kind of plot hole that they left open. Now, Mister Terrific kind of said, "Oh, I don't think Luthor is lying about this. I think he's telling the truth because of computer forensics or whatever," but we didn't really get an answer. So I'm curious to see where that is going to go. But all in all, I guess it was just fun. And Gunn, for all his faults, can really knows how to make a fun movie. I really feel that way. But in that regards, one of my contributors to my Substack, Rosemary, she changed. She got married recently, so her name is different. Rosemary Stainbrook. She wrote a totally opposite review to mine. She said it was a Justice League movie. She said they should have just called this movie
Mhm.
Justice League. And I understand that criticism, but I think when you're uh, introducing a wider universe, you need to go ahead and plant seeds because that's a big criticism of the MCU films. Where was Thor in Iron Man 3? Now, me, I didn't care because that's how it is in the comics. Iron Man goes through a bunch of stuff, Thor never shows up. But to a moviegoer, that doesn't make much sense. So I understand why James Gunn had to do that. But anyway, I wanted to also ask, like, how do you think that or what do you think that the movie would have been better if the Justice League characters, or excuse me, Justice Gang characters had been removed?
Mm. Yes,
Oh,
I agree.
interesting.
I think I think I would have loved to have seen David Corn Sweat in a Superman movie, and I don't think that's what this was.
Mm,
Be it the Justice Gang movie or be it a just convoluted, overpacked movie, whatever. I don't know. It wasn't a Superman movie to what I would have liked to have seen. Now, I
mm,
liked him as an actor. I liked his character, um, the way he was written. Um, I don't know who the target audience is. I want to say that up front because especially for like maybe your audience that's watching if they hadn't seen it yet. I know we typically, you and I, we discuss faith quite often, and there are things that are important to us, and I don't mind a movie that has profanity in it at all. I'm a filmmaker and I have profanity in my films, but I don't target them to kids.
mm,
And this seemed to have quite a bit of profanity in it. Nothing hardcore, but it was a lot. It
mm.
was a lot of words sprinkled throughout the whole thing, and it seemed like it was targeted to kids and had that. So that kind of messed me up a little bit. And crypto is definitely being targeted for marketing purposes and merchandising purposes to kids, or to anybody, I guess. Really, I mean, look at Baby Yoda. Everybody loved Baby Yoda, right? So,
Grogu.
Grogu. I had a feeling you would do that. but but I mean, and I get it. No hate. You got to do what you got to do. But but yeah, I would have I don't know how I would have felt taking a young child into that and seeing it. It was a little much for me
Mm.
for it being what it was. Um,
There is this weird thing in Hollywood where they don't want to tone down language anymore. I do agree with that. I was thinking that when they did the final season of Star Wars Clone Wars, that obviously the audience for that show had grown up, but there was foul language in the final season, and it
really,
really shocked me. I was like, "Whoa, this show was supposed to be on. This show was on Cartoon Network, and later on Disney XD. I don't understand why there's foul language in this. So I do understand that criticism. My wife and I don't have kids yet, so sometimes I kind of have a blind side to that. I do have a
sure,
niece, but I don't take her to the movies regularly with me, right? So my sister and brother-in-law do that. So it's kind of so I do understand that I might have a blind side to that part of it, but that makes a lot of sense.
sure, yeah. So that kind of threw me off a little bit. Now, to me, and I have a feeling you're going to disagree, and that's perfectly cool. I'm excited about that. I love having the dialogue. I think the worst part of James Gunn's Superman was James Gunn. And
Hmm.
I knew that going in because he does have a style, but I don't love that style for Superman.
Hmm.
And I don't know if he had enough people around him to pull him back and rein him in because, again, the story was paper thin. The script was all over the place. I feel like they shot about 3 different movies and edited it all together into one because there was just so much going on, and some of it didn't make sense to me. And everything just happened just because it needed it to happen. I'll give you a perfect example. What you were talking about was the translation of what was said by the parents, right? Um, I was like, why would they do that? Number one. Number two, that didn't take long for him to translate that. That was very simple for him to do. Number three, as soon as he put it out there in the public who has loved Superman for 3 years now, right? Because this is year three or whatever it is, Superman's been Superman. The world loves Superman. The world is cheering Superman on. You got the kids over there raising the Superman flag. Superman, come Superman, help me, Superman. Everybody loves Superman. And all it took was Lex Luthor to put out a video and say, yes, this is undoctored. This is legit. Everybody turned on Superman right then and there. Everybody. The politician folks that were like, I don't have a problem with Superman. Now they do. Even, I think, Guy Gardner or some of them were like, yeah, this is kind of jacked up. And then Mr. Terrific kind of said it was legit. Um, I want to say James Gunn said it was legit. It was the real thing too. But I hope they do retcon that, or maybe it's not, and they have something else extra that they can tack on. But they wasted a great opportunity to change it at the end, especially when they introduced Supergirl, who probably speaks Kryptonian and probably could
Hmm.
have interpreted it prior to this or during this and say, hey, no, this is actually what it says. There's a lot of other odds and ends and loopholes and stuff that's open that probably could have been filled in. But James Gunn inserting his humor that worked in Guardians of the Galaxy took so much away from me on this one because there were only a few moments where we had an impactful scene that I wanted to marinate on. I don't want to say Lois and Clark because Clark's in it for like one scene. The rest of the time, it's Superman either dressed as Clark without the glasses, or it's Superman as Superman. But Lois and Superman having the the interview, the conversation there, that was good. Them having the conversation with the thing in the background that he didn't feel the need to go and try to save lives and fight or whatever, because the other guys had it, the Justice Gang had it. That was another odd thing to me. But all these moments, like you had that humor in the background there. You had him just getting whooped and finally beaten Ultraman, and Mr. Terrific, hey, you quit playing around down there. I'm doing important stuff. It just felt too quick. There wasn't enough time to marinate on those moments. And probably the worst one for me was one of the most gangster scenes that I could have possibly imagined in a Superman movie. Now, we did not build up this character and his relationship with Superman other than just a quick glance at the beginning, really. But when Lex Luthor shot that dude in front of Superman, that was powerful. I was like, Luthor's evil, man. This is an evil Luthor. And I thought Nick Holt did a fantastic job. I was worried about him being kind of a more modern day demasculated beta male kind of guy, but dude came out swinging. I loved it. He shoots a guy that Superman had a pre-existing relationship with. To what level we don't really know, because again, we didn't see anything build there. So I wasn't as emotionally invested in that moment, but it was still a great moment, and I recognized that. But it took like 2 seconds for him to go, oh, that ended faster than I thought it would. Now I'm going to go find that guy that gets interviewed. You interview all the time, Clark Kent. So a little humor there and a quick movement to the next thing, because the next thing has to happen. I was like, man, we should have marinated on that a little bit. That would have really intensified the hatred toward Luthor, or the wickedness in that scene, or the power in that scene that he was having over Superman at the moment. So that was something I had issue with James Gunn, just moving along too quickly or inserting humor and whatnot where it didn't need to be.
Yeah, see, again, that didn't really bother me. I guess I didn't feel like I needed to marinate on some of the particular scenes you mentioned. I will say I agree with you. Sometimes I do think James Gunn gets in his own way. He doesn't do it as much as, say, Ryan Johnson or J.J. Abrams or Denis Villeneuve in some cases. And I love. Don't get me wrong. I really like Denis Villeneuve, especially with Dune and whatnot. But sometimes I feel like, for instance, Blade Runner 2049, I felt like he really got in his own way with that film. Just took way too long for certain scenes,
Yes,
and whatnot. But to me, he has the opposite problem as Gunn. Villeneuve makes you marinate for too long. But I do agree with you. Sometimes I do think Gunn does do that. I felt that way about the second Guardians of the Galaxy. Just really pop. Like when it was revealed that Ego had killed Star-Lord's mother, that could have been something that they rested on a little bit longer than they did. With Superman, to me, it didn't really bother me, especially in this. You mentioned the scene where he's fighting Ultraman and he throws Ultraman into the black hole, and Mr. Terrific and him kind of have this joke. That didn't really bother me. To me, it was a reprieve. Superman had just gone through this battle. He basically was fighting himself, albeit maybe a stupider version, as Lex Luthor claims. So it's like, he just had this intense. He almost dies. He defeats him, and then you have kind of, like you said, this joke. To me, I thought that it was earned. It was warranted. But I will say, the scene where Luthor kills the hostage. Yes, I do think that scene could have deserved a little bit extra screen time, a little bit more thoughtful moment. Even if Lex Luthor had left, like even if he had done oh, that was faster, I'm going to go find Clark Kent, and then it just rests on Superman for a bit.
Yeah.
But I also kind of see your point. You were mentioning there's too many characters. All of a sudden, we have Metamorpho, and it's like we don't get any character development from him whatsoever. He's just in this prison to make kryptonite to hurt Superman. So I do agree with you there that, and I like Metamorpho. I keep wanting to call him Mephisto, but that's Marvel. Metamorpho in a totally different context hero, or a villain, actually. Metamorpho, I like him as a character. He was sort of a Bronze Age character. I think he was also in Justice League International as well, but with Guy Gardner. But anyway, it was kind of that was an issue I had with that scene. Is like, oh, here's Metamorpho out of the blue, out of nowhere. So that part of it I do get. That was where Gunn was getting in his own way. It's like, oh, we're going to introduce another character because they've introduced pseudo kryptonite in the comics before, so they could have done it where, oh, it was some form of pseudo kryptonite. Superman maybe figures this out somehow, and that's how he could have escaped. He could have crushed that and escaped that way. And because I believe, if I recall correctly, sometimes pseudo kryptonite, the effects are temporary, so you can make it artificially, but then it wears off. I believe that's how some of it works. But like I said, that all of a sudden we're thrust in with Metamorpho, but as far as the fast pacedness of it, I didn't think it was fast paced enough to bother me. It was very free flowing for sure. It was more that there were moments where I felt Gunn. What's the word I'm looking for? There, I feel like there were stuff that was sometimes unnecessary, that it was overblowing. So, like with the kaiju attack, Superman saves a lot of people, which is great. But I'm also kind of like, we can move this on just a little bit here. We don't, and I know that scene was specifically for him to talk over the differences between him and the Justice Gang.
Mhm.
I will say the scene where that interdimensional imp is out there and you can see the Justice Gang in the background fighting it. That was a great scene, but I agree with you. Wrong moment. It should have marinated with Clark and Lois more, and they could have had that scene in a different context. That would have. So I do see what you're saying. I just disagree with you on which scenes you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm sure I could pick out more, and we could probably dissect more. I just getting further away from when I seen it now. I don't know if I can remember them all, but it did seem like there was a lot of, either quick jabs or puns or jokes or something that broke the momentum of the moment in several occasions. Like you said, sometimes relieving the depth of that moment. If there was a deep, heavy moment there or something, and we needed to get out of it, I think it's great. It just happened too much. It's kind of like hearing Taylor Swift or Beyonce on the radio too much. They might be great, but man, when you hear them all the time, come on now. So maybe that's all it is. But yeah, so the James Gunn humor again, that was one of the biggest things for me. But the cast I thought was great. I absolutely loved the cast. I wish again we had more time. And I'm wondering if it didn't bother you as much moving so quickly through because you are probably more familiar with the characters than I am. So I'm like,
Oh,
who's this dude? Who's that dude? Okay, I'm familiar with him, but what kind of, but what is he doing here? Why are we going to hear any other lines from him or is this it? And then it was just so much so fast, and maybe that's again when we talk to people that are more familiar with the characters, I wonder if that comes up. People that are
yeah,
more familiar don't mind as much, and people that aren't.
that's definitely possible. That was actually a thing with the Batman with Robert Pattinson. People
Okay.
who read the comic books more were kind of like, "Oh, this movie is fantastic," like me. And but then people who weren't as familiar with the comics, especially in regards to the Riddler, were kind of like, "What is this? Why is this so dark and dank and humorless?" And there's not even those moments of brevity from the Dark
Mhm.
Knight trilogy. But I was kind of like, "Oh yeah, I see. They took this from this story arc. They took this from that
Yeah.
story arc." So that could have translated over to Superman as well, eh, eh, I which is kind of was I was actually talking to my parents about this because they saw it as well, and my parents were kind of confused because Hal Jordan was Green Lantern when they were
Right,
reading it,
right,
and they're
right.
like, "Is he not Green Lantern anymore?" And I was like, "No, no, no, he is Green Lantern, but there's like four other human Green Lanterns now, and Guy Gardner is one of them." So it was that could actually be a thing, and I actually wanted Nathan Fillion to be Hal Jordan, but they wanted a younger actor for him. But I'm just Nathan Fillion's one of my favorite actors, so I'm just glad he was in it.
Yeah.
but yeah, I could that could actually be an issue. Like I said, I'm throwing off titles, right? Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Metamorpho was in Justice League International. Oh, Guy Gardner, his big run was in Justice League International. Did you know he was a Sinestro for a while? So you definitely have a point there. That I wonder if that is where some of the divide is
yeah,
as far as who is enjoying the film and who isn't.
yeah. I wonder as we talk about it. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering that. So, back to what I was saying about the characters, like, I thought Rachel Brosnahan was great for Lois Lane. Would have loved to have seen more of her. Jimmy Olsen, I would have loved to see more of him. He had a pretty good character in this one. It was great to see him get as much screen time as he did. Would have loved to see him a little bit more. I don't know who and you probably know. I don't know who the crying dude in the Daily Planet was. That had the
Crying dude.
mustache. He got on he
Oh,
got
right,
on
right.
the plane thing, Mr. Terrific's
Yeah,
thing with them and all, but he was always crying or
yeah,
something. I
I
don't know.
can't remember his name, but yeah, he in the comics, he's their sports reporter, and he's very macho. And
Okay.
he was even like this in the or like as far back as the Silver Age. It was always being like he would always tease Clark for being a klutz, but
Hmm.
then Clark would always do something minor with his powers to make him slip up. But
Mm.
so that's kind of his character. Yeah, he always puts off this machismo, and then it always ends up backfiring him on
So
him.
so then Mr. Machismo starts crying at the end,
Right.
and that means something to you because it's like, hey, that's who he is. That's what he does. And I'm like, what's up with this wuss? And I don't know. I don't know. Again, nothing developed there for me to know that. And again, maybe his assumption is, and I don't have a problem with not seeing like Clark growing up and everything again. I'm okay with that. We don't need to see Spider-Man getting bit again. Like we don't need to see the origins of every one of these characters anymore. I think for the most part, most people get that. Um, but it's what we do with that to start bringing in the characters and introducing them. I think again, I think it was too much too fast. I think it's great to plant some seeds. They planted a lot of seeds with a lot of characters in a short amount of time because this movie was what 2 hours, right at two
Yeah,
hours.
right at 2 hours.
There's so much going on in this movie.
Do,
Um,
do you think that it was reshot? Because there have long been rumors that the movie went through extensive reshoots. Do you think that that played a hand in it? James Gunn kind of downplayed it the other day. He was like, "Oh no, it won't be 700 million for it to make a profit. It wasn't."
oh god, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that it went through reshoots? I'm curious about your opinion as a professional filmmaker. Did it look like it had gone through reshoots? What's your opinion on that?
So yeah, in my
Mm.
opinion, from what I saw, it looked like it. I'll say this: that I don't know if you've ever watched American Psycho
Oh
with
yeah.
Christian Bale in it. And one of the things I always thought was cool was the way that they filmed Willem Dafoe. Is they filmed him acting like he knew Christian Bale was the killer multiple times. They filmed him like that, and then they're like, okay, now we're going to do the scene again, but you don't know,
Mm.
and so approach it from that angle. And then in the edit, they mixed the different takes on whether he knew or didn't know or whatever. So it left the audience like, does he know or not? I'm not really sure what's going on anymore. I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was
Yeah.
great. I feel like there was a lot of that in this where there were either multiple revisioned scripts out there that got pulled together or multiple reshoots that when they got into the edit, they didn't have what they needed to finish this. So they went ahead and just jumped over to this part of the story, or they had extra over here. So they threw it over there to kind of bridge it over. It felt kind of like puzzle pieces kind of put together. And, and the other thing that makes me think that is the CGI. I think the CGI was really, really, really good through a great portion of it. But then there were some parts where I was like, that really looks thrown together last minute. Like that
Mm.
looks rushed. So if they had to do the reshoots, then that means the CGI would have come into play later as well. And if they're already running out of money or if they're running up close to the release date or whatever, they would have been rushing that. So there's a
Mm.
good chance that any places in there where the CGI was lacking, that definitely could have been an area where it was reshoots done. And they didn't have the time to fine tune it. Like when you see Thanos and you see all the detail in his face and everything that goes on there, a lot of time spent
Mhm.
developing his look. And I mean, even like almost freckles or whatever that's on there, right? Like all those little bitty minute details. And then when you see like Metamorpho's kid, who's conveniently there and being kidnapped and held hostage and everything, it looks goofy as all get out. The Proton River is kind of goofy and everything. There's a lot that happens in that area that's a little goofy to me. Speaking of goofy, and then I'll pause again. The whole plot about Luther wanting this land to do some stuff or whatever. The dude created a pocket universe. He built portals and created a pocket universe. Why does he need land? Like, this dude could literally create land through these pocket universes or something. He could do, and he wants land? Come on, man. That seems really, really troublesome to me to understand that this brilliant man who decoded with his engineer and everything, they decoded, Kryptonian language and fixed the video or the recording that was not working for Superman for all these years. All of a sudden, they were able to fix it, and he's got all these people working for him, and everybody's gung ho. And dude created a pocket universe. I he and he, and then he's got monkeys on social media when he could have the greatest AI out there generating all this stuff. Like, there's just so much that I feel like built him up as this super genius. But then we grounded him too, like, oh yeah, but he just wants some land. He needs some property out there to build some things. Like, what? What? He needs monkeys to type on social media. What? Seriously? So I thought some of that was silly. And then before we close out, one more thing I definitely want to point out is both sets of parents. I got feedback on those, but anyways, I'll relinquish to you if you've got some more to throw out there.
Well, as far as the parents, I didn't like the translation of Jor-El and Lana's message. I think that's his mother's name, but I always thought that the Kents were his grounding, and so one of the things that's actually one of the things that bothered me about Kevin Costner's portrayal of Jonathan Kent is like Jonathan Kent was like, yeah, let your classmates die if it keeps your secret. Hey, let me get sucked up into this tornado. It's totally cool, dude. That really bothered me. So I did appreciate that they sort of brought the Kents back to how they were. I actually talked to someone that I know who said they teared up because of that scene. That it was really good to see Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent, whatever you want to call him, back. And this was a person who grew up with Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. So very wholesome take on the Kents, right? And then to see that back, but I do have. I do hope that that gets retconned as far as the message. That does bother me a little bit.
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
there was an anniversary of World's Finest Comics issue where I don't think they'll replicate this, but it would be awesome if they did. But in the comics, you actually see this moment where Jor-El actually, the reason he picks Earth is when he was a scientist, he came to Earth to study it, and he just happens to run into Thomas Wayne, who of course is Bruce Wayne's father, and they have a discussion about humanity, and this is what causes Jor-El to send Kal-El to Earth. And
That's
it was
neat.
yeah, it's kind of apocryphal. I don't know if DC still considers it canon, but they did it sort of like for an anniversary of World's Finest, which was the comic where Batman and Superman first met. And I would love to see them do something like that. And also, I'm hoping that Supergirl, and like I said, I'm a betting man, so I'm thinking this will happen. I'm hoping Supergirl will retcon that message and make it where Luthor was lying, that Jor-El and Lana were actually saying, just get married and have a family. Not saying, oh, make a harem. Go isekai on everybody and make a harem. I do hope that they retcon that a little bit, but just as far as the dynamics of the parents, I do appreciate the Kents a lot more than I do the House of L, if you will. So, but yeah, I love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I didn't love the message. I do hope they correct it, being either you retcon it some kind of way, or they go, oh yeah, it was never that to begin with. Maybe that is how they retcon. I don't know. That bothered me. I didn't like that at all. And then the Kents, I think they were too goofy and played too goofy, and that bummed me out a little bit because again, I think of them like you said, very grounded and wholesome, and it, endearing and sincere, and she doesn't know how to use the cell phone. It's on the table and she's yelling into it, and I saw an article where they studied Kansas dialect and all this and that to get it right. I'm like, they talk more. I'm a Georgia boy, and I was so thrown off on that. I'm like, where are these folks supposed to be from? Like, good lord. And I was like, this is just too much. Like, y'all are leaning way too heavy into this, farmer kind of accent or do something like this. And I was like, no, please just back off a little bit, back off a little bit. And I don't know the mom that well, but the guy that played the father, I've seen him in all kinds of films. I always think he's great. He was in Constantine. He was in Identity. Um, I blank now, but several other things that I've always enjoyed seeing him. His eyes always trip me out that they move so fast. But I like him, and I just feel like they lean too much into like a stereotype maybe or something of these guys, and that to me almost overshadowed that wholesomeness and what we were supposed to get out of them until that scene with Pa Kent and I don't know, Clark, Superman, whatever. Um, Outside on the little swing there, and that was a great moment. I love that moment. I think it was fantastic. I would have loved a little bit more of that kind of stuff, honestly. I would have traded more of that for less humor.
Mm.
Not that I need not that I need Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill, just dark and ominous Superman throughout the whole thing and super serious. I like the lightheartedness of it. I like that we got the bright colors again. I am so dude, let me tell you something. I am so pet peeved about modern cinema. Two things that bother me really, really badly. Number one is films seem to be lacking the beauty and luster that they used to have. Be it the saturation of the color, the brightness of the films. Because some stuff's just so dark.
Mhm.
It's so dark I can't see it. Like I know I'm getting older, but I mean, come on, that ain't me. And the other thing is the audio. Again, maybe it's just me getting older, but we got subtitles on now. Every time we watch something that's on TV or movies or whatever, we're watching subtitles with it now. But then I watch something from back in the day and I'm like, I don't need the subtitles. I can tell the
Mhm.
audio mix is completely different. I think they're more into the sound effects and the music and the booms and everything that's going on, which is cool, but it's not mixed well enough for me to hear the dialogue clearly. And if I can't hear the dialogue, I can't follow the story. So those are two pet peeves of mine. This film, I don't feel any of that. It sounded great. It looked great. I was super happy to get. You know what? I might move my score from a 2 out of 10 up higher now that I thought more about it. Not as high as you, but maybe higher. Uh, Still had too many issues, but I appreciate a lot of that. I love the bright color. I mean, every scene for the most part had a lot of bright, pretty colors in it, and that's something James Gunn has always done. I think in his films, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I think they were played. I think the Kents were played a little bit too much for laughs. I could have used when they were there more heart and more focus on that than the kind of stereotype that they played into and all. Could have used more relationship building with Lois and Clark, I think, or Lois and Superman, however we want to look at it. Um, that would have meant moments together would have meant more. The weight of Superman being in danger to Lois would have meant more to us, to me. No, I mean, obviously, I know the story of Lois and Clark, sure, but just seeing some more on screen, they had great chemistry, but I could have loved to see more of that to get just pulled into their love story a little bit more, to get pulled into that emotion a little bit more, so that every beat had more rhythm to it. It's like somebody did a great video. They compared Batman versus Superman to Captain America Civil War. Why did one work and one didn't work? Because we were invested in all those characters in Civil War, except for Spider Man, who everybody knows. So he was an easy one to throw in and kind of pick up from there, right? So we were invested in all the characters. We were invested in their relationship together as a team, that when they were divided, it meant something. Batman versus Superman didn't care a lick about any of these people. Justice League didn't care a lick about these people. And there's no development. You just throw everything out there. So to me, I want more of that as a filmmaker, as a storyteller. I feel like pulling the audience into the emotional connections between people, the bonds that tie these people together. So the hatred between people, the love between people, and you can feel that as the beats and their part of their stories go on. It just means more. So like the guy that got shot in front of Superman, that was rough, albeit not knowing their closeness or their ties or whatever. Just Superman having to see somebody get killed. That's rough for this Superman, especially. But it's someone he knew. But how well did he know him? If it was just built up more, it could have had a much more impact. It still had a good impact. Don't get me wrong, but it could have been more, I guess is what I'm thinking. And again, they had time to do it if they would have cut out other stuff. If it would have been a Superman movie that focused on Superman, but maybe Mr. Terrific was introduced in the film, and just Mr. Terrific, and he didn't steal the limelight like he almost did in this one, because Mr. Terrific saved Superman,
Right.
him and Lois, and really, really, I mean, to me, he was the star of the show. I mean, that he did a great job. I loved the way they developed him and everything about him for the most part. I thought he was great, but I would have loved to cut some of the fat, trim some of the fat, as I would refer to it as that, and develop more in this first film that can be expanded upon later. Because now when we go to the next film, what's going to happen? We go to the next film, um, we have to start building on those relationships more throughout the next film to make the things that happen later more impactful, because we don't have the foundation built already. To me, there's no foundation built in this first film other than Superman isn't as tough as maybe we thought he was, and he's getting his butt whooped a lot in the film, and maybe he's more of a punching bag for the monsters, Luthor, and even his buddies at times. And let's build off of that. That's not, to me, the best place to build off of. I would have loved to have had more backstory or more relational development between the different characters along the way, even with like Lois and Jimmy Olsen as co-workers, just the environment of the Daily Planet, which was shot in my hometown, by the way.
Mm.
So yeah, I would have loved that, but that's because that's my style, and I'm projecting like this is what I expect, because this is what happens a lot of times in those kind of origin-y films, the films that kick off the universes and stuff. And I didn't get that. So maybe it violated my expectations in that sense, in a way that I wasn't prepared for. Maybe that's why the humor and the speed of which we move from thing to thing, it makes me think of TikTok, just scrolling through or whatever. I don't have TikTok, but I know that's what it is. You scroll
Well,
through and it's just,
Instagram Reels, right?
there you go. You just move on from one thing, and then you move on to a completely different thing, and then a few seconds later you move. And that's what it kind of seemed like to me, which again is great for the modern audience who doesn't want to sit through The Godfather, which is a slow burn, but totally worth it, in my humble yet accurate opinion. um,
Yeah, I think it's The Godfather. No argument for me. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made,
but it's definitely a slow burn.
for
So it
sure.
depends. You have your different audiences, and I think we're at different places at different times in our lives too. Because there was probably a time where I was like, I don't want to sit through The Godfather and watch that if there's nothing going on for the first half hour or an hour or whatever. Whereas with this, like, so much is going on. Cool, I'm entertained by it. But now I think I have a greater appreciation for those slow burns, where I would have appreciated this being a little bit slowed down, so I could have caught up more. But again, it fits the modern audience, because even the alphas in the movie are still kind of borderline betas a little bit. They're more modern audience males. Pretty much every dude in the movie cries at some point. Just pointing that out there. But I did like that the dudes were dudes and the girls were girls. The girls were allowed to be pretty. They were allowed to want to have relationships with the boys. The boys were wanting to have relationships with the girls. There wasn't, a lot of modern day messaging that was shoved in there. The little bit about immigration wasn't enough to throw me off at all. And the only thing really about that was at the very end when Lex Luthor called him an it or whatever he called him, and he said, "No, I'm a person, I'm a human." And then he went on to spill about I cry, I feel this, I feel that, which again is a little much for me. But I get what he was doing. He was
Mm.
grounding himself in his humanity versus being called an it or an other, which is what Luther was doing because he was this alien, he was this immigrant. So that's the only thing I got out of that as far as that goes for the immigrant thing. It was not that off putting to me at all, like James Gunn and some of the media and press were putting out there. It didn't bother me at all.
Well, it's good, and and I understand because I wanted to ask you about this because, like you said, they have to build off this film, and I had always said that DC. I've been saying this since the Snyderverse. What DC should have done is the opposite of Marvel. So Marvel introduced all of these some people call B characters, right, and then created the Avengers movie. But with I always said DC should have done the opposite. They should have done Justice League first and then had done prequels and spin-offs. And we kind of got that with the Superman, right? Because they introduced the Justice
Mm-hmm.
Gang and the I guess what we're going to be the main Justice League characters.
Right.
So I'm curious how they're going to build off of it because we've got Peacemaker season 2 coming. We've got the Lanterns, which I'm actually excited about. Lanterns, that actually looks like a pretty good show so far. But we have Supergirl coming. And it was originally called Supergirl of Tomorrow, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hoping because they changed the title because Superman Woman of Tomorrow is one of the worst Supergirl comics ever written. Tom King wrote it. He is a disaster. I don't know what happened to him. He wrote when they did the DC Rebirth, he wrote the first 80 issues of Batman. He was supposed to do 100. The sales dropped so much they canceled it after 80 issues. So he was such a terrible writer. And
Mm.
he did some good things, but like he did the War of Jokes and Riddles. I think that was a really good Batman arc. But otherwise, I was never really impressed with his stuff. He wrote Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and he's credited as a co-writer for the Supergirl film. So I'm a little worried about it because of that. So I'm curious how they're going to build off of it because I was kind of hoping they would do sort of the Helen Slater version of Supergirl, where she's from a surviving city that's stuck in one of these pocket universes, or something like that. But it seems like they're going to do the sort of the what era was that called? The Final Crisis era, where she witnessed the destruction of Krypton before she went into stasis. And so that's why she is how she is because
Mm.
she's trying to drink to forget watching her planet die. I
That
don't have a
makes sense.
problem. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that in principle, but I feel like the way they've been handling it over the years has really caused the character to become devalued. So how are they? But they did change the name of the movie, so I'm wondering if maybe they're going a different direction from that era of Supergirl. But I don't know. Where do you think that it's going to go? Because Chapter 1 is called Gods and Monsters. It's kind of their play off the Infinity Saga. So I wonder, who do you think they're going to introduce some big bad, or do you think it's just going to be like a bunch of kind of origins that are going to lead up to Justice League, or do you think that it's going to introduce some sort of big bad who's going to be like Darkseid or Mongol? I don't think they're going to use Darkseid because of the Snyder cut, but
Right.
I'm just saying as an example. Where do you think it's going to lead? I'm curious your impressions on it, because I think they're just going to do a bunch of spotty stuff and then go into Chapter 2.
This is such a hard question to answer because we're talking about DC after all,
Right.
right? I mean, Marvel has been trying, and they did finally crack that nut back in Iron Man and
Mhm.
kind of Hulk a little bit, I guess. Um, Creating that cinematic universe and stitching it together and allowing it to make sense together and having the big bad, multiple bads, whatever. That was a unifying story throughout the whole thing, right? DC has never done that. DC's been all over the place between the films and then what's in cartoons and then what's on TV shows. It's been all over the place. So it's hard for me to answer that because if we stick with DC's old school format, it's going to be all over the place. I don't think there's going to be anything coherent that's going to stitch it all together. But at the same time, we do have James Gunn in here that's heading it up, that has seen the Marvel blueprint. So my theory would be they would introduce a couple of big bads or a big bad at a time and develop the individual stories, like you're saying, um, to get us through to the ultimate Justice League fight with the big bad or whatever it may be. That would copy Marvel, the formula, but I think it's a formula that works. And I think that would be the better way to go, because if it's so disconnected and disjointed throughout, then I think you're going to have people that like this character or this series, but not the whole thing. I
Mm.
think you've got to find a way to tie it all together to keep people engaged. We look at what Marvel's doing now with all the Disney Plus shows and stuff. People haven't watched half of that crap. You know, I think most people probably watched or at least started watching WandaVision, the first one. They're like, okay, cool. This is where they're going. And then after that, all the shows, trailed off. I mean, what was the last one? Ironheart?
Yeah,
How
no
many
one
people watched
cared.
Ironheart? Right. And then they brought out one of the coolest characters. I don't know anything about him, but what a cool sounding character, Mephisto, right? And I mean, he's like a big bad, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's cool. And they introduced him in Ironheart of all shows. Anyways, it's getting more disjointed than it used to be. I think because they want to be on their streaming platform and have shows and stuff. DC has already planned all that. They've already said we're going to have the shows, we're going to have the cartoons, the animated series of stuff. We're going to have everything all over the place. But I hope that there is a consciousness to it all, a connective tissue that runs throughout that keeps us engaged. But also, we don't have to watch every single different program to know what's going on. Because again, Mephisto getting introduced is a big thing, but I'm not watching Ironheart to figure all that out. Am I gonna, the next thing that Mephisto is in, am I going to have to go back and watch Ironheart? No, I hope not. Because if so, I mean, that's great marketing for them and a strategy by them. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to watch every single, film and show that you put out. Some stuff may catch my attention, some stuff may not. Focus on the main thing, keep the main storyline. And maybe if they did that, if TV kind of had its own storyline, films had their own storyline of connective, things that are going on, that might be better because again, the last thing I think you want is to spread your audience too thin and then you start losing them. If you can keep them engaged and keep them excited about the next thing, then I think you're good. I think more people, whether they loved the Superman movie or didn't love the Superman movie, I think we can all say we're very curious to see what's next and how they evolve from this one, be it the next Superman film or Supergirl or the Lanterns or whatever may come after this. I think everyone's curiosity has peaked a little bit to see where they go from here. And I'm in that camp. I'm interested to see. I'm not ready to throw in the towel and say I never want to see anything from this universe again. I'm skeptical, especially the more involved James Gunn is for my taste, but I'm interested to see where they go. And I think they got a lot of potential with Supergirl, like you were saying, if she's gone through a lot of hurt and that's why she's acting the way she is. And we're going to see her deal with that. That is something deep that they can do with. Now, if they start throwing in a lot of jokes and everything while she's, going through that, I don't know. That might take away from it. But I would love to see that. And then I would love to get back to a good Superman with David Cornsweet. I would really like to see him evolve as a Superman. I had a buddy we were talking to last night. He used to do work for a marketing group that worked with Marvel. And we were talking about the character development and all this and that. And he was saying that he feels like David Cornsweet could definitely be their RDJ as like the character to build off of. And I don't know if I see that yet, but I definitely am hopeful. Like if they buckle down, I think he was great casting. I would love to see where it goes, and I would bet on him if you got James Gunn out of the room a little bit. That would be my stipulation. But yeah, I'm hopeful, and yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping they have. I honestly hope they follow the old school Marvel blueprint as they introduce the characters or introduce their backstories or continuation of the stories or whatever. They do have their the little obstacles they have to overcome, the little battles they have to overcome with the baddies or whatever. But there is that connective tissue of the great fight, the big baddie, or whatever it is. I'm hoping that's what they do.
Me too. And I also think a big way we're going to see how it's going to go is with Superman's relationship to Batman, where it was very antagonistic in the Snyderverse.
Hmm.
But they once, and it's true that the relationship starts off that way no matter what universe it is. But depending on the writer, obviously, as well, they always tend to kind of come to this sort of frenemy stance. And I really hope that we do something like that with Batman and Superman, where it moves away from their totally antagonistic and whatnot, that there's like at least some synergy there as
Hmm.
far as the darkness and the light. I
Yeah.
would like to see that, and that's also going to depend on who they get, because they fired the Flash director from directing the in-universe Batman film. Andy Machudi was I can't remember his name, but whatever it was.
Not gonna work here anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have heard a rumor. I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you can shake some leaves in your sphere of the entertainment industry. I've heard a rumor that Gunn wants to get sort of the old Marvel band back together, because when he came on board, they had what was called the Marvel Quality Control Board, and it was John Favreau, Avi Arad, Ike Perlmutter. I don't think anyone's going to bring Ike Perlmutter back after he ruined Black Widow and the Inhumans, but especially he's trying to pinch Favreau from Star Wars, and I don't know if he's going to happen if that's going to happen. But the rumor is Gunn wants Favreau to direct The Brave and the Bold, which is his Batman movie. Hopefully, that movie name will change as well. But that's the rumor I'm hearing. He, like you, because you were saying he wants to kind of do that, go back to the Marvel formula,
Yeah.
but use it for DC. I think that will be telling if it ends up who's casted as Batman, how the relationship with Superman is, and who is going to direct Batman. I think that will definitely be a clue for how the DCU is going to go. But this is all speculation at this point, obviously. But Chris, I want to give you a chance to shout out where you're at. I know you've got your show, The Morning Mayhem, which is awesome. I highly recommend watching his show on Rumble and on YouTube. And Chris, where can people find those shows, and where can they find you elsewhere?
Well, thank you. That means a lot coming from you, sir. I do appreciate that. Yeah, it is the Morning Mayhem. I am on YouTube, Rumble, and I post to Odyssey. I actually get some folks watching over there pretty good. But you can find me at My Morning Mayhem, at My Morning Mayhem, because the Morning Mayhem is one character too long. So at My Morning Mayhem on X, Minds, True Social, Gab, Facebook, pretty much everywhere. If you're there, I'm probably there. Just trying to promote my stuff out there. But yeah, I do shows. I've tried to change the format recently because I was doing one show a week, and I feel like that was kind of dated by the time it came out. And I would clip that show, and it was really dated by the time the clips came out. So now I do shorter clips, shorter episodes, and I do them. They come out Monday and Tuesday mornings, and I have two more that come out Thursday and Friday. That way, they're more fresh. They're short. They're to the point, and yeah, it actually cuts down time for me in editing and stuff too. So it works out win-win for everybody, baby. But that's what I do. I talk about pretty much any kind of news. Entertainment news is a huge one, obviously. I talk about politics. I talk about other pop culture news that's going on, things that are going on. I try to cover stuff that's either um, hot and spicy at the moment or stuff that the mainstream media just is not covering the way they ought to be covering it, trying to be a voice of opposition and bring out that to the people that need to hear it. That's something that really got me going in the first place, was just bringing the other side of that story out to people and exposing that. But my passion's always been with entertainment, with the filmmaking or arts in general. So I do cover a lot of stuff with that. And I do a live stream with a buddy of mine on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern time, and that goes off the rails, which is the name of the show. It definitely goes off the rails. And then the first Monday of every month, I try to do a live stream. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I do one on my show and have some great people on, and we have a little fun talking about whatever's popping at that particular moment in time.
That
Oh,
makes
and one
sense.
more question, real
Oh
quick,
shoot.
especially for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, which I'm assuming if they've watched all this, they may not. But if they if they hadn't seen it, they want to go see it. Mid credit scene, little scene, And post credit, worth sticking around for or not, in your opinion?
Mid credit, yes. Post credit, no.
Okay. I feel like we've already seen the mid credit scene, so it's not, and the post credits, no. So I would say to anybody, save your time. Don't watch all those CGI artist names go by and go and get home. But but I thought they could have done better with those. But I want to get your take on it because it's a cool shot in the
Mhm.
mid credit one. But it didn't really add anything to me. But that's my thing.
And let me know in the comments section, do you agree with Chris? Do you agree with me? Where do you stand on the movie? Because it's all just a fun. We need to make talking about movies fun again. You
Yeah.
know, none of this stuff on X where we're trying to rip each other apart because we like or dislike a movie. Let's have fun talking about movies, which was what this conversation was all about. Because I always have fun talking to Chris about all things pop culture. So everyone else, like I said, go check him out on all those places he listed. Check out his channels. And of course, subscribe here on StudioJake. If you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell so you get notifications when I do post a new video, and consider becoming a channel member. Thank you again, Chris, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And to everyone else, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on StudioJake.